Hi, thanks for joining us again for 3 Minutes in Mark. This week we're looking at Mark chapter 8. This is a remarkable passage because it comes really as a completion of a theme, or at least the beginning of the resolution of a theme that we've been seeing throughout the entire book of Mark. And that's a theme that we'll call the Masonic Mystery, where we see Jesus kind of veiling who he is as the Messiah. When the demons cry out, "You are the Son of God," Jesus commands them to be silent. The disciples, after they see the storm calmed, they look at one another and say, "Who is this, that even the wind and the waves obey him?" See, people aren't fully grasping or understanding what it means that Jesus is the Messiah. They're expecting some sort of earthly deliverer, but Jesus is much, much more than somebody who's just going to overthrow Rome for them. And we see this confusion about who Jesus is continue now in chapter 8 in the first 10 verses. There's the feeding of the 4,000. And what's remarkable about this little passage is the disciples should have seen this miracle coming. The circumstances are the same that we saw a couple chapters earlier in Mark 6 when Jesus fed the 5,000. There's all these people that he's worried about sending home because they haven't had anything to eat. They've been listening to him teach now for 3 days. And the disciples seem to despair at this moment because they go, well, where is the food going to come from? And Jesus, of course, takes the little that they have, multiplies it, and everybody's able to eat, and there's leftovers. And now Jesus goes and he calls the disciples blind, and he calls them deaf. He says, "Having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear?" So the disciples aren't able to fully grasp who Jesus is, and he calls them blind and he calls them deaf. Now, what's great about this passage is it comes couched right between two very significant miracles. Jesus opens the ears of a deaf man, and next time we'll see Jesus opening the eyes of a blind man. So we can't fully understand who Jesus is until he opens our eyes and opens our ears. And he's going to start doing that for the disciples now in Mark chapter 8. There is a warning, though, that he gives. He says, watch out for the leaven of the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, what is that? The scribes came to Jesus asking for a sign. Right after this miracle where he fed 4,000 people, if they hadn't been there themselves, surely they must have at least heard about it. But what's so offensive about what the Pharisees are doing is they're coming to Jesus demanding a sign on their own terms, saying, give us a sign from heaven. And Jesus says, no sign is going to be given this generation. And what the Pharisees couldn't see is that everything Jesus was doing and saying was a sign pointing to who he really is. And theirs is a willful blindness that says, because I have done everything well, God therefore owes me something. He says also, watch out for the leaven of Herod. And he's the ruler of that area. He's the most powerful man in all of the area where Jesus is preaching. And Jesus says, watch out for that too. If you have enough worldly provision, be careful that you don't become blind to the fact that it's really God that's providing everything for you. So in these very unstable and uncertain times, let us be like the crowds who come to hear Jesus speak without giving a thought to what we're going to eat the next day, because we know that we have a loving God, a loving Father, who's going to provide everything that we need.